Far beyond this world, far beyond this night, far beyond the universe and far beyond this life.
Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris here with you for a special episode as we are live on Twitch for the first time, doing our best of 2021, an episode that I've been looking forward to since we did our best of 2020 last year around this time. Chris, how are you?
Good. This is really exciting. Thanks to everyone who is joining us, and special thanks to Mike for helping moderate the situation here for us. But I've been looking forward to this episode as well, and I'm going to try to forget that we're on Twitch and just kind of pretend like we're doing our normal shtick. So
very good. I like it. Just to give a little clarity about the rules of this, I think we each have a list of our top 50 albums, which we will post on all the various social media outlets, our Reddit page, our Facebook page, etc. On Monday when the podcast release of the episode drops. I don't think we're going to talk about all 50 of the albums. I think we'll probably focus on the top 25. And I'm sure there will be some overlap between my list and yours. And then this year we decided to add a couple of things as well, doing some other categories like Song of the Year, Best EP, Best Non-Album Single. I won't divulge all of the categories, but I have a list of them, and we'll kind of go through them, I think, at the end, as there may be some overlap there with our lists as well. If that sounds good with you, I guess we can get right into it. All
right, very good. So we agreed, as we did last year, that I would do my list first, and then Justin will chime in with his thoughts on anything he feels like mentioning. And then that way, if there's any repeats on his list, he won't have to go into too much detail, so we're not getting too repetitive. But I just want to make a point to mention that I just the other day realized that I forgot all about Metalite's Virtual World album. I bought it in March, and I must have never placed it in my new albums playlist. So I listened to it twice this week, and I liked it a lot, and I liked it so much that it landed at number 26. So it's just gonna miss the discussion today. It probably would have posted higher had I had a chance to listen to it more than twice, but I liked it a lot. I especially thought the song Beyond the Horizon was really strong. So good stuff. But my actual number 25 to start things off is going to be Secret Sphere's Lifeblood album. This was, I believe, Roberto Messina's first album back with Secret Sphere after... Is that right, or has he done two since?
No, this was his first one back. Obviously, Michel Lupi had been with them for quite a while, and I think that, at least for my ears, they kind of went in a different direction a little bit when he took over the mic and doing lead vocals. This was more of a return to form, and I'll just chime in. I have this at number 34, so I think we're pretty close on this one in terms of like the placement. This was really good to hear because to me, it reminded me of the old Secret Sphere, which I fell in love with, 20 years ago. Very, very good. Surprisingly strong. I was very surprised by how good Ramon's vocals are, even to this day. Having not done very much, he did a really good job with this album.
Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. Not to say that I did not enjoy the songs that they did with Lupi, but I thought that, this was just akin, a reminder going, kind of back to the older albums that he was on. And I thought that Secret Sphere is still kicking. And I'm glad that they are still just putting out really good material. And this definitely made my list. It came out in March, I believe. That's when, came out in March, and I kind of forgot about it for a while. And then I was kind of, trying to tune up my list, and I kind of was reminded of how good it was. So At number 24, staying in the power metal realm, I had Orden Ogin's Final Days album, which I thought this was Gunman was a fantastic album too. That was their previous album, but I thought this was another really strong album for Orden Ogen. I enjoyed it a lot. And again, this was another album that came out, I believe it came out the same day as the Secret Sphere album. And it was another one I kind of forgot about because it came out back in March. And then going back and listening to it again, I was impressed at how well it held up. So, 24, I got Orden Ogin's Final Days.
So I have obviously my top 50 list, and every year, and I've been doing this for a long time, but in February, I send you a playlist with kind of like all the stuff that just missed the cut. I have the Orden Ogen album on that like secondary list. It's probably in the top 60 or 65, if you will, but it doesn't make my top 50. I thought Gunman was so strong, and I thought that as good as the album was, and I guess it was a little bit unbalanced for me, I guess is the way I would describe it. There were some songs on here which I thought were really good, others which were not as strong, but I thought Gunman was a better effort, and I still think To the End is their magnum opus, if you will. So just didn't quite make it a good album, not their best, but certainly good enough, and I can understand why you, as our resident power metal fan, would put this high up on the list.
Yeah, good stuff. Moving on to number 23, I had Annette Olsen's solo album Strong, which she worked on with the great Magnus Carlsen, and I thought that he kind of was the magic touch because Annette's previous albums really weren't metal albums. They were almost like alt rock or pop rock, and I thought this was a really great first like metal album for Annette, and I just have always had a soft spot for her vocals ever since she was in Nightwish, and I thought this was a really strong album, no pun intended.
I agree with you. This was a surprise. I am unabashedly a fan of her vocals in Nightwish, and I know a lot of people would disagree with me. I still think that their best album was with her on vocals with Imaginarium. This was number 45 on my list. It wasn't quite as high as you, but it was definitely one of my favorite releases, and it deserved a spot on the list just because of how surprised I was at how much I enjoyed it. It took the best elements of Magnus Carlsen's writing and then just added her vocals, which I think are underrated and sometimes underappreciated. So totally with you there. I'm glad it was on your list as well.
Excellent. Good stuff. Next, I had what does this put us? 22. I had Brainstorm's Wall of Skulls. This was my favorite Brainstorm album in a while. I thought this was really good. Another one that I picked it up in September when it came out, and I don't know that I ever really gave it a good listen until towards the end of the year, and I was really kind of surprised at how much I enjoyed it, as I don't find I've always liked Brainstorm, and I just feel like their last handful of albums, nothing really kind of blew me away, but this I thought was really good, probably their best album in a while.
I would say it's their best album since Soul Temptation, which came out in 2003, and they've had a lot of albums since then. This was definitely a return to form, and you'll be hearing me say that about a couple of bands on as we get kind of deeper into this. I really enjoyed this album as well. It didn't make my top 50. It's on that secondary list that I had mentioned, so it's just outside the top 50. But this was a real pleasant surprise for me and a nice return to form.
Absolutely. Next, I really should have numbered these. Number 21.
That's why you got to use Excel, my friend. Everything is nicely numbered and neat for me.
Yeah. Number 21. This one was a big surprise for me. This was on your recommendation, and it ended up being an album I really liked, and it was Cambrium's Synthetic Era. It's kind of deathy, but also kind of has like that really awesome symphonic and there's symphonic elements. There's like electronic elements. This wouldn't have struck me as something that I would normally be into, I guess. But I just enjoyed the hell out of this album, and I thought Cybernetic Overload, that song was just a real earworm. So
yeah, this
was
was a surprise for me as well. I have it at 49. It just made the top 50. The sound effects and like the patches they use on the keyboards on this thing and like some of the sound effects were fantastic. And it was just wildly catchy. I look forward to hearing more from them. This was a real nice surprise, and somebody I had never heard of until I just kind of stumbled upon it. And I'm like, you have to hear this. So apparently you liked it even more than I did. So that's, I'm glad to hear that. I definitely am a fan, and I want to hear more.
Yeah, that one was a real surprise for me, but good stuff. Next, at number 20, I have an album that I'd be willing to bet is not on your list. It's Vomitron's Righteous NES album. I couldn't not put this on here. This is an all-instrumental album of NES cover songs. I believe it's the third put together by Pete Ruccio, who was or is in the band Armory. And this is kind of his little side gig that he does. And he did some phenomenal, the only games I was really familiar with on this one were the original Final Fantasy and Mega Man 2, but the choices he made were actually really cool with Ghosts and Goblins and Life Force and Silver Surfer. He just chose a lot of really cool songs. And I couldn't not put this on the list.
I listened to it once. I thought it was good. I never listened to it again. It's not on my list, but knowing your taste, not surprised at all. I figured if this had a home in the top 25, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I was such a huge fan of the first two NES cover albums that he did, so this was kind of a no-brainer. It probably would have been higher up the list if he had chosen more games that I was familiar with, like Maniac Mansion or Little Nemo the Dream Master, but, still good stuff. So, I think I said good stuff a lot. So anyway, into the teens we go. Number 19, I have Jeff Scott Soto's Duets Collection, Volume 1. I enjoyed the hell out of this album. I wasn't really expecting too much. It's just a lot of tunes throughout Soto's career kind of done as a duet, but there were some really fun versions of Yngwie tunes and one of my favorite songs, I'll Be Waiting, which he did when he was in Talisman. This was just another album that kind of caught me by surprise and I ended up enjoying a lot.
Yeah, this came out, I think, in October, and it's funny because there was a period of about maybe like 2 months where every episode we mentioned Jeff Scott Soto in some form or another. So I'm glad that everything comes full circle with this release. I don't have it on my list, but I have to say, between this and the Wet album that he did, it was a busy year for him, and I think he had a lot of guest appearances on some other albums as well. This was nicely done. I like the track list. I think there was some surprisingly good songs on here. I couldn't believe, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Living the Life from like that movie on there, from the Rockstar movie, which was kind of funny. Just good,
yes,
good.
It was actually.
Yeah, it was, and he got like a who's who of vocalists, including Eric Martinson and Russell Allen and Johnny Joeli. So good stuff. I'm glad you liked it as much as you did. I have to go back and revisit this again. Yeah,
cool. I liked the duet that he did with Dino Jelisic, the Yngwie cover. I think we had mentioned it in a previous episode, but it was cool hearing Russell Allen on here too. So, and Mats Levin as well. Speaking of Wet, that was next on my list at number 18.
There you go, back to back Soto, huh?
Yeah, the Retransmission album again. Like, just this is just him and Eric Martinson are just I think a can't miss duo. So I enjoyed this quite a bit. What did you think?
I had it in my top 50 list for a very long time, and somewhere around like November, I think it got bumped. So it never actually made the list, but I had it up there for a long time, and I did listen to the album quite a bit. It just missed the list, and I think the reason it missed it is because there was other stuff that was either a little bit of a recency bias, I think, with some of the newer releases. That was the Wet album came out really early on, and I think it was kind of a victim of that a little bit. But I definitely enjoyed it. It was not my favorite Wet release. I did think that the other two albums were better, but it was a solid effort for sure.
Very nice. Next, this would be 17. I have the new Eldritch album, Eos. I thought this album was fantastic. I don't know that I have really much to say specifically, but it's just everything that I think Eldritch does best, and I feel like them having Oleg Smirnov back on keyboards, I think, is really kind of brought back that old Eldritch kind of Eldritch sound, but like in a modern sort of way. I enjoyed this album a lot.
I have to say this was a very heavy album. I was surprised at how chunky the guitar sounded, and obviously Oleg's keyboards are phenomenal. I did not have it in my top 50, but I made a playlist to go along with it. I will post it on Spotify in the very not so distant future. This was the 51st track. As you know, I end all of my playlists with a cover song, and I put their cover of Runaway as the 51st track and final track on the playlist. So I kind of cheated and added this in because I thought it was a really awesome cover, and I like the album a lot, but I just didn't fit the 50, so I made it 51.
Fair enough.
I cheated.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. I thought that cover was really, I was surprised when I heard it. I saw the name and I was like, yeah, I'm sure that's just a song called Runaway. And then it started and I was like, oh, we're doing a little Bon Jovi action. Really, really well done cover. So definitely worth checking out. So at number 16, we go back to Mr. Magnus Carlsen. I have the Heart Healer metal opera. I'll be honest with you, based on the lineup of vocalists, I thought this was going to be like a slam dunk top 5. It didn't reach those heights that I think expected, but I still enjoyed it a lot. And I mean, the fact that it has Adrian Cohen and Nora Luimo and Annette Olsen and just a number of fantastic female vocalists. I like this a lot. It's, again, kind of like if we're not getting burned out on Magnus Carlsen yet, he just is such a he writes some mean songs, and this was kind of a cool thing to kind of go the Avantasia route, but with all women singing. And I thought, I've always been such a huge fan of female vocalists in metal, more so than males in a lot of cases. So this was, I thought, a lot of fun, even though it was a little bit disappointing just because my expectations were so high.
My biggest problem with this was that my expectations were through the roof. I thought the samples that they released in advance of the album were fantastic. And as I was waiting for this album to be released, I just kept thinking to myself, this has the potential to be the album of the year. And it didn't make my top 50. It was on there for maybe like the first 6 months of the year, but it got replaced. And I think my issue with the album was that, again, my expectations were just so lofty that they were never going to meet those expectations, and they actually fell quite a bit short. I like the album. I can't say that I love the album. When it comes to the pantheon of Magnus Carlsen discs, this was probably a little bit lower on the totem pole than most. Something just didn't click, and I can't even put my finger on it because obviously the songs are, what you're going to get with him. The vocalists do a great job, but something was missing, and I can't really pinpoint it. I'm not surprised you had it high on yours. I would have guessed that the second I heard it, but for some reason it just fell a little flat for me.
Okay, yeah, understandable.
Don't worry, I'll get to Sleep Token later, and then you can shit on that. So we'll get there. Don't worry.
Well, I mean, I think just based on a lot of what I read other people saying about this album, I don't think that you were alone in your thoughts. I think that when you put together a list of artists like that. I mean, you can't help but have unbelievably high expectations. Super glad that we had a chat going, because I was just reminded that I completely skipped over number 15, and this is what happens when you don't use Excel. My number 15 album was Edu Falashi's Veracruz album. This one, I listened to it, I think, the first couple of times, and it was just okay for me. And then the last time I listened to it, it just clicked, and I ended up loving it. Really good stuff. It reminded me of Edu era Angra more so than I'm blanking on the other band he was in. Alma, yeah. But I thought just the songwriting was phenomenal, the production, everything. Just a really great album. So thank you for our friends in the chat for reminding me of that, because I completely skipped over it. But yeah, that was my number 15. So
my biggest gripe with this album is that you have it too low. This was number 7 for me, and I remember the first time that I heard it. I was coming up to see you, and our friend Mike and I were in the car. I put this on. He was a huge Alma fan and a huge Angra fan. We put the album on, and from Jump Street, from that first intro track, I could not believe what I was listening to. I was blown away for the next hour, just as to how good this album was. I thought that Edu never sounded better. I thought that the production for a power metal album was as good as it gets. I have nothing but great things to say about this album. This is the best Angra album since Rebirth, and maybe the best Angra album since Holy Land or Angels Cry. It was that good. I loved it, and I just couldn't say enough good things about it. It's not number 1, but it's probably my number 2 power. It is my number 2 power metal album of the year.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be one of those albums that I think grows even more on me as time goes by. At number 14, I have a band that I always have high expectations from, and they are always met, and that band is Eclipse, and that album was Wired. There's just something about Eclipse's music that it just sucks you right in. You only have to listen to it once to know that it's going to be great. And this was another really great release from them, and another Eric Martinson appearance here. But just a lot of really good melodic metal came out, I thought, this year, and this was towards the top of the list for me.
I agree with you. And if it wasn't for another melodic metal album, which I'll talk about later, or maybe 2 of them really, this would have probably been higher on my list. And it was pretty high. I have this at number 25. This was so catchy. I mean, every time I just found myself singing that song, like, what is it, Saturday Night, over and over again. You just can't get it out of your head. I don't think it's their best album. I still think Bleed and Scream is their best album. I would say this is their second best album, though. I really enjoyed it, and they don't really have a bad song. They kind of follow the formula, but they do it so well. You can't not love these guys. So it was in my top 25 as well, and now is one less album I have to talk about a little later. I really enjoyed this.
This is a band that their songs should be played at sporting events. Like, I want to hear
be at a hockey game.
Yeah, I want to hear Saturday Night Hallelujah played like in between penalties or before the power play or something. I think that's that just fits that kind of environment to me. So
I couldn't agree more.
Sticking to the that same kind of genre, I have at number 13, lucky number 13. Here's one I kind of was pretty surprised about, only because it's a guy who never did a solo album before. Ronnie Atkins, his very first shot at a solo album, One Shot being the name of the album, I thought was wonderful. Very introspective with what he was going through, battling cancer, and he still is. And he's got another solo album coming out soon. So he's keeping busy. But a lot of the lyrics really felt like somebody trying to say, like, life is short and live your life. And I thought it had a really great message, and the songs were catchy as hell. I don't really know how much of the songwriting process he does for Pretty Maids, but based on this, I imagine he probably has a pretty decent amount, but I thought this was wonderful.
This was great. And this was probably one of the last two albums that got bumped in mid-December from my list. So if you want to call this 51 or 52, I'm right there with you. This was such an enjoyable listen. And obviously there's a little bit of nostalgia because of our, kind of some of the experiences that we had obviously mentioned in past episodes with Pretty Maids and with Ronnie in particular, just because he was such a nice guy. But with all that he's going through, you couldn't not smile when you listened to this disc. And I felt like that resonated through. And when you think about what he has been going through and you have this positive disc come out on top of it, I just thought it checked off all the boxes.
Very well said. I'm looking forward to the follow-up, which I think is supposed to come out fairly soon. So I think there's just one of the singles just dropped the other day. Coming in at number 12, this was an album that was sitting up high for a while because it came out so early in the year. It came out in late January, and it's Labyrinth's "Welcome to the Absurd Circus." This was
so you have Labyrinth at 12. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
I have Labyrinth at 12 as well.
There you go.
Yeah, this one, I'll let you do the honors.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so I had this sitting at 3 or 4 for months. And then I went back and some other albums that came out later on kind of pushed it down the list. But, I mean, it was a hell of an album, and whatever it is about metal bands covering that Ultravox song "Dancing with Tears in My Eyes," that they add themselves to the list with Freedom Call and Avantasia and probably somebody else I'm not remembering, but this album was phenomenal. Roberto Taranti just it like his voice is just timeless, and Olaf Thorson just doing his thing on guitars. This is just a band that after like a weird kind of period, they've just like come back like on fire. Like there was a time where we thought like Rob wasn't even in the band anymore and Mark Bowles was going to be their singer, and then all of a sudden they're back and they're doing Return to Heaven Denied tours, and now this album, which is arguably their best album since Return to Heaven Denied. I thought this was awesome.
I think it has to be. I mean, listen, I found it a little repetitive, and it's basically one speed, and that's like your finger on the turbo button. But they did it so well that you couldn't not have it high up. And I also had this in my top 5 for a while, and obviously it fell to number 12. But this is their best album in almost 25 years, so it had to be up there. The talent is unbelievable, and I just thought that. I thought they knocked it out of the park with this one. I did not think they had this album in them anymore. If I'm being honest with you, it blew me away.
It makes me want to see them live again.
Yeah. I agree. This material would lend itself perfectly to a live show. So, Milton, I know you're listening, so make it happen, my man. Make it happen.
So, my number 11, which is my lucky number, this was another one that caught me off guard that I ended up enjoying a lot. And that's Leverage's Above the Beyond album. I just, the song Emperor and the song Starlight, just those first two songs, the album just kicks off so strong, and it just hangs in there all the way from start to finish. This is a band that you got me into years ago that I've always been on my radar, but I enjoyed the hell out of this. I thought this was great.
I have been listening to these guys for probably close to 20 years at this point, or at least 15 years. I think it was Tides, maybe their first album, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that neighborhood, like 2006, something like that. I have enjoyed everything that this band has put out. And then I got to this album, and I tried, and I listened to it, and I played it on repeat. And the bottom line is, for me, there were 2 songs that clicked. I think it was Angelica and maybe Under His Eye, if memory serves correctly. It was 2 songs towards the middle of the album that I really enjoyed. And the rest of it just fell flat to me. And I tried, and I said to myself, just by knowing this band, this is something I should like. And it just did not resonate for me. And we'll talk about some of the disappointments later in the podcast. Without giving too much away, this is on that list of just disappointing albums for me. I could not get into it.
All right. Wow. That's two very different opinions there.
That's
But,
why we're doing it. I'm going to keep
yeah.
it honest, right? I love the band, but I thought this album was probably their weakest effort.
Okay. Fair enough. At number 10, going into the top 10, Marius Danielson's Legend of Valley Doom Part 3.
There it is. I knew it was only a matter of time.
Oh my God. What a cast. Ralph Sheepers, Olaf Hayer, Herbie Langens, Daniel Hyman, Alessandro Conti, Tommy Johansson, Alessio Garavello, Tim Ripper Owens, Jonas Heidgert, Matthias Blad, Elisa Martin, Melissa Bonney, Rafael Mendez,
Drop the mic. I mean, what else do you have to say?
Yeah, Aaron Lucassen doing some guitar work, Bill Hudson doing some guitar work, Timo Summers. This Marius Danielson does not have, I think, a limit to how many people can come onto one of his albums, and this is just your quintessential kind of cheesy power metal, that symphonic power metal that I absolutely adore. And I thought that this was really a very fun album. It was higher up on my list as it came out a little bit earlier in the year, back in May, and so it might have dropped a little bit. But when I went back and listened to it, I was like, damn, there's just so much going on. And it was just a very enjoyable ride, and didn't have the Michael Kiske, Daniel Hyman duet of, previous album glory, but it was still pretty awesome. Just really good stuff. And if I tried to keep track of what the hell the story is, I think my head would spin. But
I know it's a part 3, but I don't even know that there is a story that's running through this. I have it on that list of albums that just missed my top 50. I think it's because of my disenchantment with power metal, or the fact that I just don't love it as much as I used to. We were talking about an album the other day, and I was just saying, if all the power metal sounded like this, I think I would still be in love with the genre. This is close. I think the first 2 albums were better, but I did enjoy this, and I am not surprised that you have it in your top 10. I don't know how he assembles this cast of characters, but he does a great job with it, no question.
Yeah, and whenever something involves Tommy Johansson, it just gets automatically, catapulted for me. And then you throw in Alessio, and I'm sold. So
There you go.
Coming in at number 9, we're going to have a lot of power metal for the rest of the night, so strap in. At number 9, I have Bloodbound's Creatures of the Dark Realm. This might be my favorite Bloodbound album they've done.
Really?
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Okay. I liked it. It was fine. I don't think it was anything. I don't think it was anything that different from some of their prior stuff. But maybe it's just I'm a little biased because I'm a little Bloodbound out. I saw them twice on 70,000 Tons of Metal. It was all right. I'm a little. I don't know. There's a fatigue factor there. I think for me, and maybe that's why I didn't have it higher on my list or on my.
Well,
list.
I have a feeling you're probably gonna say the same thing about my number 8 album, and that was Powerwolf's Call of the Wild, which,
oh man,
they didn't do anything new, but I just found myself enjoying the album as I enjoy all their albums.
I am one of the few people that just don't understand this band. I like their stuff. I enjoy listening to their stuff. I just don't have them in that upper echelon that other people have them in. And I don't know why, because I feel like I should love it, but it's fine. It's good. I enjoy it. I can put it on. I can listen to it. Pass me my top 10. And that's what I guess I find myself gravitating towards more at this point. But I do understand why you like them. I just don't love them.
To me, they are like the church version of Sabaton, where I go into it thinking that I'm going to be completely bored, and I end up loving it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. But I enjoyed it a lot.
Nice.
Yeah. So number 7, Seven Spires, Gods of Debauchery. This is an album, every time I listen to it, just got better and better for me. I thought we spoke about their previous album at length and in a previous episode, and we talked with Jack and Adrian about, this album hadn't come out yet. They talked about making it, and I thought that it was going to be very hard for them to top the previous album, Emerald Seas, and sure enough, they managed to do it. This band is just getting better and better and better, and it's only going to be a matter of time before they absolutely blow up. This was wonderful, and I loved the long track in Sickness and Hell, or I'm sorry, This God Is Dead with Roy Khan.
Yes.
Kind of like putting his blessing on the new Camelot in a lot of ways. So, but yeah, this was great, and Adrian just does such a phenomenal job of singing in more than one, more than one style of vocals, and she just does those heavy growls and that, and then just beautiful clean vocals just equally as well.
Yeah, I have this at number 19. It made my top 25 as well. This was so good. I think it is clearly their best album. I think their songwriting has just improved so much in such a short time. It took me a while to digest it. It was a long album. I thought there was a lot going on here. There was a lot of different styles, which they seem to blend together so well. But I really enjoyed it. And I feel like if you ask me, a year from now to take a look at this list, I think this is one of the ones that has the potential to move up even higher. And I had it pretty high at 19, but there's something special going on here. And I think that they're on the precipice of really blowing up.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder if there's going to be a point where they can't top their last album, but they've figured out a way now that they've released 3 albums. So here, I have an album at number 6 that I think you're going to be rather surprised by. And I think I had mentioned to you that I said I have an album in my top 10 that I bet you didn't even sniff your list. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that I am. But it's actually an album that came out early in the year, and I listened to 17 or 18 times, no joke, throughout the course of the year, because it was like my go-to album when I wanted to hear something that was just
let's play a little game.
Catchy.
What is it? What genre? Let me take a guess.
It's power metal.
Shocker. Early this year, power metal. I don't know. Give it to me.
Kalidia's Lies Device re-recording.
Yes.
I could, from the moment that the first single came out, yeah. I could not stop listening. I didn't really notice this album when it originally came out in 2014, and going back and listening to it now, the production on this re-recording blows it away. The vocals by Nicoletta Rossellini are unbelievable. It's just that kind of catchy Italian power metal that I'm just a sucker for, but I could not stop listening to this album throughout the year. I think every song is at least really good, but then there's songs like The Lost Mariner and Black Magic that and the title track as well that just blew me out of the water. So this band is very much on my radar now after this re-release. I mean, they only had 2 albums and they decided to re-record the first one, but I battled about even including this because it's a re-recording, but I liked it that much I wanted to include it on the list.
Yeah, I had a feeling it was going to be up there because I remember when it came out, you were all over it and you talked about it a lot obviously off the podcast just because of how much you enjoyed it. So I'm not surprised. I think you cheated by putting a re-recording up there, but it is so different because of how much better it sounds. And it wasn't like they just remastered the album. They re-recorded the whole thing. So I'll give you a pass. Plus nobody was listening to this in 2014 . So
if I was familiar with the original album, I probably wouldn't have put this on here.
It's new to you.
Yeah, exactly. As they say, if I haven't heard it, it's new to me.
There you go.
So we make our way to the top five, and in all honesty, you could probably tell me what the top 5 is because I think you know me that well. Maybe not in the order, but you probably can guess which 5 bands. So at number 5, I have Ad Infinitum's Chapter 2 Legacy album. This album I didn't like as much as the first album upon initial listening, and I went back and I went back and I went back, and every time I listened to it, it just rose up the list until it made its way up to number 5. I think that it is actually a hair better than the debut. I admit it, but this band is another band that I think is on its way to blowing up. Melissa Bonney, just like Adrian, is so good at doing the death vocals, but also the clean vocals. The songwriting is fantastic. The musicianship is great. This is a band that's going places. I predict a opening tour with Camelot at some time in the future.
Nice. I told you the second I heard this album that this was better than the first one, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I stand by that. I'm glad you finally saw the light. This band is getting bigger and better. And quite frankly, when you look at their trajectory, they're going to be headlining festivals soon. And I do believe that. This was more of the same as the first one. If you like the first one, you're going to like Chapter 2. But I thought it was catchier. I thought it was heavy. It really just hit all the boxes. I had it in my top 10 as well. I have it at number 8. So I think I'm right there with you on this one. I love this from the first time I heard it. Other albums that I'll talk about kind of grew on me over time. This one hit me the second I played it.
Yeah. Well, it's well-deserved praise. At number 4, Night Flight Orchestra, Aromantic 2. This is another album that I didn't love initially. And again, the more I listened to it, by the last time I listened to it in early December, it flew right back up the list. Just one song after another of just catchy ass tunes. I know you're not a big fan of White Jeans, but I love that song. I might wear a pair of white jeans when they finally come play at Prague Power USA someday, or maybe just a suit. Maybe nobody wants to see my fat ass in white jeans, but I love this, and it just, you just put it on and it just gets you in such a good mood. Like it's just fun music to listen to, and they do this kind of 70s and 80s kind of throwback sound that I think nobody does. And you think, the singer from Soilwork, like, what's this going to be like? And probably not what you were expecting if you were expecting Soilwork. So, yeah, good stuff. This was good. And I thought that the first Aromantic album was so good. I think it was in my top 5 on last year's list. I thought it was going to be hard to at least to even just match it, but I think they did. I think both albums are they're both equally impressive, and I don't think the sequel is worse than the original in this case.
I had the first Aromantic at number 6. I thought last year, and I just absolutely adored this album. This one I struggled with. Not that it was bad. I just didn't think it was as good, and it came out so close in time to last year's that it was just like another album for me. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't like a huge disappointment, but something didn't click for me, and I can't really say what it is. I am very much looking forward to seeing them live. I think that live show will be fantastic. But I found myself listening to At the Movies more than I did the Night Flight Orchestra, which obviously features Bjorn on vocals as well, doing their covers of 80s and 90s movie tunes. But for some reason, I played this album maybe about a half dozen times, and it didn't click like the other albums did for me, but it wasn't bad by any means. So I can understand why you liked it.
Excellent. Number 3. I can't believe I'm saying that my number 3 album of the year is a disappointment, but when I found out this band was coming out with a new album, I figured it has to be number 1, right? Beast in Black, Dark Connection. It's awesome. It's a great album. It just is a shade below the From Hell with Love album, their previous album, and their 2 albums that I just happen to enjoy a little bit more. But other than those top 2, I thought this was great. I thought that they kind of tried out a little bit more stuff. I tried to be a little bit more different and not as derivative as the previous album was, as good as it was. And I thought they really did that with Moonlight Rendezvous. Just kind of had a different, more of a mid-tempo kind of song that I thought they just hit out of the park. And then you have your One Night in Tokyo, which is just that like real toe tapper, just good stuff, fun to listen to. And the two covers at the end were really interesting choices to go with Manowar and Michael Jackson
Can
as
you
your
pick
covers.
two different bands? I mean, it's
yeah.
crazy.
I thought the Battle Hymn cover was better than any version that Manowar ever recorded, and
I agree with that.
And I thought I think Giannis couldn't help himself, had to do a Michael Jackson cover and sing Michael Jackson better than Michael Jackson. So
this they were in a tough spot with this record as far as I'm concerned, because their last one was my album of the year. I thought it was obviously that good. I have this at 13, and it oscillated. There were times where it was in the top 10. It was one point probably closer to 30. I liked it, but something didn't click, and ultimately it found its way over here. It's the way I would say it is, it's good enough and highly enjoyable, and that's why it's high as it is, but it wasn't as good as the last one. But by obviously no means bad, because I listened to hundreds of albums this year, and this was in the top 15, so that's good. This band is also continuing to shoot up in popularity, and I think that they're another band that'll be headlining soon enough, just because you can't listen to this and not enjoy it. You just,
well, they are headlining, just on the wrong side of the country for us.
Yeah, I know. I guess I have to travel for that. It's that is a shame. I'm waiting for that East Coast headlining show, but if not, may have to travel.
There you go. Number 2, Epica's Omega album. This is just one of those bands that just hits it out of the park each and every time, and I think that this album is even better than the last handful for whatever it is. It's not like they're kind of changing the style, but it's kind of like their music is like their own genre, like Epica metal. And they're fantastic at it. And I thought this was one of the best Epica albums. And that's saying something, because all their albums are at the very least great. So, I enjoyed this a lot.
This, for me, this band has become a victim of their own success. And by that, I mean every album is just so damn good that I don't even have this in my top 50. And the reason for it is not that it wasn't good. I enjoyed the album. And every time I listen to it, I say to myself, this band is so great. And this album is so good. But like, I've just heard all of this stuff so many times in the past that if another band had put this album out, it would be in my top 5. But they're a victim of their own name and of their own success, and I just didn't have it as high because it's nothing new, in my opinion, from them. It's just more of the same great stuff. But I found myself gravitating towards other things. And when you hear my top 10, I think you'll understand why, let alone the top 25. There's a lot of stuff in here where it's stuff that I hadn't been listening to, but just kind of blew me away because it was new and different. Maybe not number 1, but for the rest of the stuff.
There's a lot of albums that I wish I had a chance to listen to more times than I did. And there was a few things that I didn't even get a chance to listen to really too well, like the new Manimal album, because it just came out a few weeks ago. But to no surprise to anybody, this album was my number 1 album on June 18th and never left that slot for the rest of the year. And I listened. I didn't say that this has to be number 1. My ears were open and I was willing to let something take over the number 1 spot if I felt like it deserved it. But the truth is that the self-titled Halloween album was my album of the year. And it was an album that, I waited over 20 years to hear, and it didn't disappoint in any way. And we got to talk about it in long form when it was first released. And I think I had given it a 9.5 at the time. And I stand by that rating. I just thought it was a phenomenal album, start to finish. I think Andy Darris is doing the best songwriting of his career. Wyke's songs that he contributed were phenomenal, and Kai didn't write a lot, but he wrote this just unbelievable epic tune in Skyfall. I just think that if this is what Halloween's going to be going forward, count me in, because I think it just has breathed a whole new life into this band, and this is coming from somebody who loved their last album with just the original band with Darius and everything. I thought that was their best album in a long time, but this is just on a whole nother level. And the second I started the disc and heard the opening of Out for the Glory, and then Michael Kiske starts singing, and for the first time in 30 years, Michael Kiske is singing to a song that Michael Weikath wrote. I mean, it was just nothing else stood a chance this year, and I just thought this was that good. And to just jump ahead a little bit, Robot King was my song of the year. I just
really.
Yeah, just
right.
An unbelievable song, unbelievable album. And as a diehard Halloween fan, it was pretty much everything that I wanted it to be and everything I expected and hoped it to be. So that's my number one.
This album couldn't help but disappoint. And by that, I mean I don't even want to talk about expectations, but when you have Kai Hansen and Michael Kiske and the rest of Halloween in the same recording studio for the first time, essentially in all these years, it was either going to be the number one album of the year or it was going to just royally disappoint. And it's my album of the year as well. The second I heard Skyfall, I had a smile on my face that I just couldn't remove. And I played the song over and over. And obviously we discussed the album in long form. The reason I have this as number one is really just because it made me smile more so than any other disc I heard this year. I don't think it's a perfect album. I'm not even sure if it's their best. It's probably not, to be honest with you. But I just enjoyed it so much. And there's a bit of a nostalgia pick here, obviously. But when I went through the rest of my list and I enjoyed a lot of these albums, I thought that, just as a year in music, I thought there were a lot of good releases. I didn't think there were a ton of great releases, or definitely all-time great releases where I was going to look back 10 years from now and say, this was still one of the best albums of the time period. This would be the only one, I think, of my top 25 where I would look back and say, still absolutely fantastic, top-notch Halloween, if that makes sense. Whereas some of the other stuff is really, really good, but I didn't think it was necessarily like transcendent music. So I had to put it at number one as well. My song of the year is Skyfall for the reasons I just mentioned. So I think we have a little bit of a similarity there as well. But you took a little bit of my thunder away, but I knew what your number one album was going to be 6 months ago, let alone 6 minutes ago. So I'm glad you chose it. I think it's well deserved.
Whereas I wasn't sure if this would be number one for you. So it might be the only time we ever have the same album as number one. I mean, I think we were pretty far apart last year. So maybe this is just the moment where we're on the same page for once.
Well, I'm looking at my top 50 list, and by my count, we had 10 in common, which is not a lot when you figure that we, obviously do this podcast and we've been listening to the same music together for 25 years. There's only 10 out. Well, I shouldn't say that. Obviously, I haven't heard 26 through 50. So,
well, I'll read them off to you real quick. 26 through 50. I'll just name the bands: Metal Light, Phantom Elite, Dragony, Frozen Crown, Serenia, Pentakill, Neon Fly, Arion, Therion, Skeletoon, Crown, Temple Balls, Terra Maze, Lauren Luimo, the duet album, Northtail, Temperance, Timo Tolkki's Avalon, The Grandmaster, Dream Theater, Draconicon, which you told me about last week, and that made it onto the list, Ravian, and League of Lights, which I had mentioned in our Richard West episode, Leprous, Catalyst Crime, and I had Need at number 50.
Very interesting. Definitely some more overlap than I originally had said. I won't get into too much detail, but I guess I'll start with some of the stuff towards the back end just because I want to mention a few words of it. There are two bands on the list called Crown, the first one of which came in at 47 for me, and the album was called The End of All Things. It was on Pelagic Records, much like The Ocean. This was my post-metal album of the year. If you like The Ocean, you got to check these guys out. Very, very cool stuff. Very dark. Not usually my go-to style of music, but I do appreciate it quite a bit. And I listened to this album early on in the year, and it just stayed in my top 50 the whole time. So a little shout out to Crown. You had mentioned it being a very strong year for melodic metal. I have a ton of melodic death metal in my top 50. I thought that there were about 4 or 5 just fantastic melodic death metal albums, some of which are Ghost of Atlantis. What else do we have? Silent Line. Just a lot of stuff towards the back end, and then we'll get into some more as we push into the top 25. But I thought it was just a really good year for melodic death metal. One of the albums that we kind of joked about was Evergrey's Escape of the Phoenix. I had it in my list, and then I didn't have it in my list, and now it's back in my list again. I have this at number 33. It grew on me with each listen. I don't think it was anything entirely new, but I thought it was just exceptionally well done, and I had to put it in the top 50 just because it grew on me, and it kind of had some sticking power towards the end of the year. I found myself enjoying it more than I anticipated. So a couple of words about Evergrey there.
I would have liked to have listened to it more, because in the couple of times I listened to it, it was easily my favorite Evergrey album in a long time. And I think that Eternal Nocturnal is maybe my favorite Evergrey song ever. I
Nice.
thought that was such a really good, just a really, really good song. So yeah, unfortunately there's just certain things like I think I only listened to the Iron Maiden album once. Like there's just there's only so much time. And if it didn't grab me enough to go back and listen to it again, then unfortunately, I mean, I listened to a lot. Like, last year I couldn't even make a list of 50. And this year I had a number of albums that fell off of a top 50 list, by some really good artists. So, definitely trying to cram more music into my brain each year that goes by. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing, your top 25, or at least the 15 that we didn't overlap. So
we're going to get there. But I'd be remiss, you talk about like not enough time. One of the albums that I was on my list, but I think had I spent more time with it, it would have been higher up on the list, was Between the Burieds and Me's Colors 2. It came in at 32. I really enjoyed it, but there was just so much going on there. And the album was just so dense, that I think I would have needed a month with it. And I just didn't have the time. So it made the list. And if you give me more time, it probably makes the top 25, but it's just on the outside looking in at this point. So that's for the prog fans out there. I had Northtail at 28. I was shocked at how much I enjoyed this album. I thought it was so much better than the first. I love the new singer, and I just liked how each song kind of gave a real shout out to some of the band's clear influences. I mean, there's one track that could have easily been on Holy Land by Angra. So, a lot going on there, but I thoroughly enjoyed that album.
it was like a tribute album to the mixtape that Ralph made me in high school.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was basically like the mixtape in 1997, but played with this production and current production and stuff like that.
This was another one I wish I could have listened to more. It came out kind of towards the end of the year. I have a feeling it probably would have landed a little bit higher, but it still made the top 50, all things considered. But yeah, I think that they're definitely a band that's on the way up too.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And without further ado, we'll get into the top 25. Obviously, I mentioned Eclipse at 25. My 24th album was one that I had not heard of. It was one of the few albums that I had not heard of at all until Glenn from Prog Power had put out his top 50 list. This one was a complete surprise to me. It was called, or the band is called The Amorphous Androgynous, and the album is called We Persuade Ourselves We Are Immortal. So I can't take credit for this. I had never heard of these guys, but when I listened to this, I immediately thought of Pure Reason Revolution's The Dark Third Part 2. It is one of my top 5 albums of all time. We've not yet discussed it on the podcast. I will make you sit down and do a deep dive into that album at some point. It is, I listened to it yesterday. That's how much I love that album. But when I listened to this, it really harkened back to that sound of just like this ambient, like almost Pink Floyd, type thing that they have going on. This came out of absolute nowhere, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know it's not on your list. I don't even know if you've heard it, but for me, it just checked off all the boxes.
I probably downloaded one of the songs. I usually try to listen to Glenn's entire, at least one song from Glenn's list, because there's usually a handful of things that I am not familiar with. So yeah, I did get to listen to the title track. But because I was getting my list ready, I didn't get a chance to really listen to the playlist of Glenn's stuff more than really just one time. So yeah, that's something that I'll have to revisit.
Yeah, it's not easily accessible, so I don't know that it's going to click for you, but give it a shot. I think it's worth at least one playthrough. Coming in at number 23 was a band called Aranea, and the album was called A Voice for the Lost. This was like my alternative album of the year, and by that I mean like think Evanescence, but with more of an alternative rock sound from like the late 90s. This was a late addition for me, as I only heard it in December and I completely overlooked it, as I believe it came out in March. I can't really describe it other than I can say, like, think of like 90s alt rock, but with a really awesome female singer singing over the top. I think you would love this. And the reason I actually chose this or kind of went back to it is because the cover art was so good that it forced me to listen to this album. I said, what is this? And then I played it and I realized that it was really, really enjoyable. So sneak peek at my album art of the year. This is one of them for sure, because if it wasn't for the cover work here, I don't think I would have ever listened to the album.
I'm not sure I've heard of the band, so I'll have to
check that out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. 22, we come in with our pop album of the year, which was White Moth, Black Butterflies, The Cost of Dreaming. This was kind of the brainchild of Daniel Tompkins from Tesseract. A ton of radio-friendly stuff on here with outstanding production. It was just a really nice change of pace, and I found myself going back to it a lot, especially after I listened to some of the heavier stuff that's on this list. I can't describe it other than like radio pop rock, but with a prog flair to it, I guess we'll say, but just really, really cool, nice female vocals that kind of made it pop. An underrated release that I don't think a lot of people were talking about this year.
Nice.
And it was just a nice, just something very, very different. At number 21, one of many prog albums on my list. The band is called Lucid Awakening. The album was called Drifting in a Sea of Uncertainty. Kind of eclectic prog metal, I should say. One of those things where like kind of just kept me on my toes because every time I thought it was going to zig, it zagged. Another album that a lot of people were really not talking about, but if you're a prog metal fan, this is something I think you would love. Even you, I think, would appreciate it as more of a power metal guy. Just because
even me.
Yeah, even you as a power metal guy, I think you'd enjoy it. Admittedly, it probably could have been higher on my list. I just didn't play it enough, but every time I listened to it, I just really enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah, that's one that I missed too. So
yeah, you're gonna miss number 20 as well because I only have one thrash album on my list, although I did enjoy the new Exorcist album quite a bit. But at number 20 is Cryptosis with Bionic Swarm. This is the way I like my thrash. Really, really tight production, really, really good sound, and just exceptionally tight playing, obviously led with like these guitar riffs that are just phenomenal. This is a band that every time I hear the album, I say to myself, this screams 70,000 tons of metal. This is the kind of album that you need to be out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and have these guys just tearing up the main stage. I really enjoyed this album, and for a guy who's not the biggest thrash fan of all, this definitely satisfied my appetite for the year.
Yeah, but was it as good as Megadeth?
Yeah, well, that's a story for another day, for sure. Seven Spires at 19, as I mentioned. Number 18 was Teramaze and The Beauty They Perceive. This album was great. They released an EP this year that was very good. They released a single in a song called Battle, which was really good. They were the busiest band of 2021 as far as I'm concerned, but I feel remiss if I didn't put them on the list. lots of listens to Terra Maze because of just the quantity of material that they put out. But I thought that this deserved a special place because I really enjoyed this album a lot.
I did too. I liked it a lot, and it's funny, we both had a joke about one of the year-end awards would be Best Terra Maze album because they did so much. But yeah, I thought this was wonderful. Just really good stuff. It's on my top 50 list as well, and it's very, very well deserved.
Yes, completely agree. Coming up at number 17 is the Neil Morse Band, Innocence and Danger. This was my prog rock album of the year. Neil Morse is an absolute genius. I didn't love the new Transatlantic album that much, but he hit a home run with this solo album. And if you just look at this man's discography, it is incredible the amount of quality material that he has put out year over year. This was a no-brainer for me. I didn't listen to it a ton, but I loved it every time I listened to it. So it made it pretty high up on my list. Have you given that a listen at all, or not so much?
No, I haven't, to be honest with you.
I think that his stuff is just very accessible, even for prog rock. Definitely highly recommended.
Cool. I'm looking forward to listening to your playlist just to kind of catch up on some of these things that I had missed. So
yeah, I have already made the post that's going to go on our Reddit page, and I included links to songs for each of these albums. Obviously, I'm not giving a description because we obviously are doing that right now. But I will say that the playlist is kind of an all-in-one shop that I think people can check out some of the stuff that either they missed or they want to go back to and listen again. So that'll be there for anyone that wants to hear it. Coming in at number 16 was my melodic death metal album of the year. And in a year where there were a lot of them, Demotional's Scandinavian Aftermath. This is exactly how I like my melodic death metal. It's catchy, it's hook-driven, it's keyboard laden, and it has just a perfect blend of growls and clean vocals. Really, really good stuff. In a genre where there's kind of a lot of crap, this really just ascended to the top with some others. So definitely worth a listen.
This was just shy of my top 50. I actually
really,
yeah, I like this quite a bit. I probably should have listened to it a little bit more, but yeah, you had recommended it, and I thought it was quite good.
Yeah, it's catchy. It's not just melodic death metal for the sake of death metal. They actually emphasize the melodic, which I think is important.
I could not agree more, and I look forward to kind of going back and giving that another listen.
Nice. I think so do I. To be honest with you, it's been a couple of weeks since I've heard it. Coming in at number 15 is the first album that made my list back in January, and it just stayed there the entire year. I have no idea how I heard about this album. I literally just stumbled upon it, and it was an instrumental disc, and yet here we are. And no, it's not Liquid Tension Experiment. That I knew. This is a band called Sithu Aye, Sithu Aye, and the album is called Senpai 3. And if you look at the cover, you would think it's some sort of an anime disc or something like that. I really don't know what the words mean or what's going on the cover or why they called it Senpai 3, but this instrumental disc was fantastic. And simply put, one of my absolute favorite songs of the year was on this disc. I don't think it's going to be like the number one song of the year or anything like that, as we've already discussed that, but there was a song on this disc called Mari's New Day, and it was one of the best songs I've ever heard. It was that good.
You had sent me that song, and I thought it was great. That album was also just outside of my top 50 as well. I enjoyed
Nice.
that a lot, and another really good recommendation on your part. Yeah, something a little bit different, but something really just enjoyable. It's nice to...
Sometimes you get lucky when you just stumble upon something, and that was definitely one of them. Coming in at number 14 was a band that you had mentioned earlier. I think it was in your top 50, and that's Neon Fly's The Future Tonight. I love this band. This album was actually recorded in 2019. It finally saw the light of day in 2021, as it had been years since their prior release. This, I don't think, was their most balanced album in the sense that there was a couple of tracks in here that I didn't care for as much, but some of the other material was just so good that I had to put it high up on the list, and I listened to it a ton. It's amazing to me that this band does not get any recognition. Nobody talks about these guys, but I feel like they should be, on everyone's radar. And that's not why I put them so high up on the list. I just happen to love these guys.
Yep. Another one that was, that one actually made it into my top 50 again on your recommendation. And, everything you said was true. I enjoyed it a lot, and it was I had a lot of nice surprises thanks to some good recommendations by you. So
I have an idea as to what you like, so I try to give you only the stuff that I think you're going to enjoy.
Well, you nailed it on that one.
Good. Beast in Black at 13, Labyrinth at 12. At number 11 was the best Dream Theater album that Mike Mangini has ever made, and that's A View from the Top of the World. I couldn't believe how good this album was when I first heard it, and there's it's Dream Theater, so you're going to get some of the wankery. We know what that's all about, but I thought the songwriting was so tight on this album. And is it Images and Words? No. Are they going to go back to Images and Words? No. Is it Awake? No. But this was probably the Dream Theater album I liked the most since 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. That's how good I thought this album was, from top to bottom. And I just, for a band that I thought was getting just a little bit stale, and, I don't have to tell you what I thought about The Astonishing, because I thought it was just astonishingly bad. This album was just a real return to form for these guys. I loved it.
I like this a lot too. I kind of wish I listened to it a little bit more, but it was definitely, to me, the most memorable Dream Theater album in a while. And I thought that they stayed away from doing too much, which they have definitely been guilty of. And I think The Astonishing is the epitome of them doing too much. And I know it's a love it or hate it album. I honestly never even got to listen to the entire thing just because I couldn't set aside 2 hours to listen to just one Dream Theater album. And so to me, that was a negative, but I mean, I know there's people that love it. I just thought that this was kind of Dream Theater just sticking to what it does best without having, 27 and 42 or 38 minute songs. It was just like, let's just make an album, like a Dream Theater album. And I agree with you. I think it's their best work since Mike Mangini joined the band.
Yeah, I once I heard it was in your top 50, I said they must have something here, because I know your thoughts on Labrie and everything else. So kudos
I
to
still
them.
think Labrie sounds phenomenal in the studio. It's just like night and day with when they perform live. But I mean, he still sounds great in a studio setting. We'll never take that away from him or his producer.
There you go. And with that, we get into the top 10. At number 10 was an album that when I heard it was coming out, I was hoping that it was going to be the album of the year. It wasn't, but it was good and it was consistent, and they are just so good live that I was a little biased, even though I haven't heard any of this material live, and that's Sone's Imperial. I enjoyed the hell out of this album. To me, I have always said this is like the modern blend of old Tool and old Opeth without the growls. And I just think that these guys are on, like, we talk about bands on the precipice of blowing up. They've already started to blow up. They were great at Prog Power. They were great on 70,000 Tons. I caught both of their sets. I have to see these guys live again as they just continue to gain popularity. And this album did not do them a disservice. This was a really good album from start to finish. If anything, it was disappointing coming in at 10, just because, like I said, I had aspirations, or I kind of thought that this would be in the top 3, but it just never quite landed there. It was a little weaker than that, but it was still a very good release.
Yeah. I wanted to listen to this one more, and I think I listened to it once, thought it was good, and then everything else just kind of passed it by, and I never went back to it. I had the intentions of listening to so many more albums in this past week, and then I ended up having to go into this like training thing for work, and I listened to almost no music this week, and so certain things maybe didn't fall where they should have, but I know a lot of people spoke very highly of the Soen album, so maybe something that I can circle back to in the new year.
Well, the number 9 album I have is something that you not only are not circling back to, but it's something you probably will not even try to digest. This was Bellacor's Coherence. These guys, simply put, are a modern day Opeth. They are Australia's answer to what Opeth was doing around Blackwater Park, and they are phenomenal. This was another album that, much like Between the Buried and Me, there was a lot to digest here, and it took a number of listens, but it clicked. And just like all their old albums, it clicked. And when it clicks, it winds up in my top 10. I love these guys, and they're a band that I am dying to see live just because of the complexity and the depth of their music, which is just phenomenal. So this is one of the better prog albums of the year. To be honest with you, I actually am, just taking a quick look at the list. I think this was my prog album of the year with this, The Sown and the Dream Theater were the three best this year. I just absolutely loved it.
Well, they were in good company. That's one I'm going to have to listen to because I am not familiar with that one.
Yeah, I had a feeling, and that's okay. That this is they're a little bit off the beaten path, and not just because they're from Australia, but just because they are a bit abrasive and aggressive in parts, and it's just it's that dichotomy between the clean instrumental tracks that they have and these like long epic heavy tracks that I just absolutely love. So check it out. Definitely worth listening to. Ad Infinitum at 8, Ebu's album at 7. At number 6 was almost my Rookie of the Year album for a band that there was a lot of hype for this release, and it did not disappoint. And that's Spiritbox's Eternal Blue. If it wasn't for an album that I'm going to speak about in a couple of moments, this lived up to all the hype. It was not flawless, but the highs were among the best of any album I heard this year, and I listened to this album a ton. They're another band that's going to absolutely blow up, and this was only their first release. The future is exceptionally bright if the songwriting stays as good as it has been.
I enjoyed this one as well, too. Another one that kind of just missed the top 50 for me, but I thought this was really good as well. Very, very promising debut album for sure.
No question. Number 5 was by far the biggest surprise for me. This album that I'm about to talk about came out of absolutely nowhere. And when I think back to the band's prior efforts, I would not put these albums in my top 50, my top 500. I was not really a fan of the band until this album came out and blew me away. And that's Lok Vostok's Opus Ferox, The Great Escape. They changed their singer, Teddy Moeller, no longer on vocals. And what a difference. This singer was phenomenal. And the album was very, very similar to me, to the new Pyramaze album, which I just absolutely loved. It's that catchy, chunky blend of melodic power metal and a little bit of prog. And I just thought it was exceptionally well done.
I had it at 56.
There you go. Yeah, it was just.
I only listened to it once, but it made it to 56 on one listen. So
nice, and I think that says a lot about it because this album was just. It came out of nowhere. I was not expecting it, but when I heard the single, I said to myself, we're in for something special, and I just enjoyed this album a lot. And I think if there's any album that I was going to grab after we're done, I want to listen to this one again just because I enjoyed it that much. It was a fun release. It was catchy. It was chunky. It had everything.
Beautiful.
Number 4. I can't believe I'm saying this. Temple Balls, Pyramide. I kept going back to this album, and even though the name of the band is so stupid, this is just great melodic hard rock, hooks that last for days, and just fun songs. And I just kept listening to it, and I would go, and then I wouldn't listen to it for a couple of weeks, and then I would go back to it, and it was one of those things where I just played it so much. I liked it right away, and it just never fell off the wagon for me. I just kept it up high on my list because of how much I enjoyed it over and over again. Just a fantastic release.
Yeah, I mean, the name of the band almost kept me from listening to it at all, but I'm so glad that I did because this was really, really good stuff. And if you just enjoy good old-fashioned, fun, melodic metal, this is a can't-miss album.
Totally agree. Number 3, I don't know if it's prog. I don't know if it's radio rock. I don't know what the hell it is. But Sleep Tokens, This Place Will Become Your Tomb. Not a perfect album, but nearly flawless. It was so different and so introspective, and the band is so mysterious. You don't know who's in the band. You don't know what they look like. There's something so unique about their sound. And the singer is just so different from anything else I listened to. I'm happy that they gained a lot of traction with this release, and it seemed to go over well, although I admit it was very polarizing. I love this album. I know your thoughts. I know that it probably wouldn't make a list of a top 1,000 for you, but I loved it, and so much so that it wound up at number 3 on my list.
Yeah, I'll talk about that album a little bit later.
Okie dokie. I guess we'll get to that. And number 2, which was a album that another album that I just went back to over and over again, and it might have been my most played album this year, and is the reason why Eclipse is at number 25, and that's Crown's Kings in the North. This came out of nowhere. It was short, it was sweet, and it was catchy as hell, and it was one of those things where it was such an easy listen, partially because of the length and partially just because the songs are just so catchy and melodic that, like, there's no way they're going to top this. They hit it out of the park with their debut. I don't think they're ever going to come close to this again. It was just so tight and succinct that I probably played it, like I said, more than any other album, just because it was just, I don't know, it was just a pleasure to listen to. And if it wasn't going to be Halloween this year, Crown probably would have been my number 1 album of the year.
Yeah, I like this one a lot too. Again, I never had heard of them. And then sure enough, you told me to listen to them, and yeah, this was great. I think I have them right next to, actually, yeah, right one slot ahead of Temple Balls, actually. So
there you go.
Both neck and neck for me.
Yeah, I couldn't. As obviously they were close for me. I think I liked both discs a little bit more than you, but not by a ton. Both just really, really catchy albums. And I think that if you look at this list, I mean, I didn't even get into all the albums in the top 50, but what I found myself doing is gravitating to just diversity. And I would go from Bellacore to Crown down to, I don't know, Altesia, which is like a French prog band that released a really good album earlier this year. And I was just bouncing all over the place, but it really kept things fresh and interesting for me because I just can't listen to the same things over and over again.
Makes complete sense.
So I think with that, we wrap up our top 25. So you want to get to some of the other categories before we head out?
Yeah, sure. We talked about our songs of the year, and they were both off of the Halloween self-titled album. And you went Kai and I went Waikiki, but there was no shortage of great songs from that album. And hell, I would even say "Fear of the Fallen" might be the best Halloween song Andy Darris ever wrote. So good choices there. Who did you have for your best debut album?
I cheated and I just looked at the list and I said to myself, well, what is the highest one on the list? And I go back to Crown. I thought it was just a fantastic debut with Spirit Box right behind them. I thought for 2 albums with their first real releases to hit my top 10, I thought that was a real testament to both bands. I think that I will have to agree with you. If Annette had not released the album before Strong, I'd say she would. I mean, it's kind of like a debut album because it's her first like full metal album as a solo artist. But I would say I didn't have a ton of first timers on my list, but I'm gonna just kind of defer to you on that one. Well, I think that I know that you enjoyed both. I know that Crown was a little bit more enjoyable, but listen, the fact of the matter is, for new showings or for bands that are really just showing their wares for the first time, they could have done a lot worse than those two. So
yeah, I think the Grandmaster is worth mentioning too. Which
yes,
we kind of spoke with Jens Ludwig during the summer last year. Oddly enough, that same weekend that you were driving up listening to the Edu album, and he had hinted at working on a new project, and it turned out to be the Grandmaster. And I thought it was really good for their first album. I was impressed with it, and I enjoyed it. It didn't blow me away, but I thought it was very, very good. And with Nando Fernandez's vocals. I just thought it was good stuff. So
no argument from me. I thought it was really good. I hope they stay together and come out with some more stuff, to be honest with you.
Okay. How about biggest
disappointment?
Yeah.
There are a lot. Can I just let me just say a couple of things. I have 4 on the list because I couldn't really choose between, for different reasons. I have 4 on the list. The first is Senjutsu by Iron Maiden, and I say that because as much as I liked the songs, I thought the production was just so awful, and I make no bones about it. I wish Lord would have recorded the whole thing because I thought that their cover was 10 times better than Iron Maiden's sound on that album. And I don't understand how a big budget band that's, filling up stadiums cannot produce an album that sounds better. I mean, it was the worst sounding Maiden album I've ever heard. And this is a band that has more money than God. So I just didn't understand that. Disappointed in terms of the sound, not in terms of the quality of the music itself.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Another one was Above the Beyond by Leverage, which I mentioned earlier. I won't belabor that point, but just disappointing. I love the band and I wanted more from that release. Another real big disappointment was The Future Bites by Steven Wilson. I thought that this album didn't do anything for me. I thought he was experimenting into areas that I just could not appreciate and just did not care for that album at all. And then in terms of just a single song that it encapsulates what I did not like about this year's music, All We Knew and Ever Loved by Earthside. After their debut, I expected Earthside to be like the second coming of the new renaissance of prog metal. That song did nothing for me. And I don't know if that's the end of the band or what, but I cannot get into that song. And I remember talking about it because it was about a week before it was released. I spoke about it on the podcast and I said, this Earthside song is coming out next week. I'm looking forward to it. And if you'll notice, I never mentioned it again because I hated it and I just couldn't get into it. And I just thought the first album was so good. And then they kind of fell by the wayside for me. What about you?
I didn't listen to it just because I think you had mentioned that you didn't like it, and I said I hadn't heard it, and you were like, "Don't bother." So yeah, I took your advice. Honestly, I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this, but the Sleep Token album did nothing for me. I didn't hate it as much as you probably make it sound, but it just was kind of boring. Like I maybe I needed to give it more listens, but it was just a little bit too sleepy for me. So unfortunately, not really my thing. And I guess the only other thing I really would mention, I guess, is the Liquid Tension Experiment album. While it was enjoyable, I just thought it was like too much. Like I thought that this could have been a 1-disc album, and they just exactly what I was saying, what Dream Theater didn't do on their latest album, the Liquid Tension Experiment did it instead by making 6 songs clock in over 10 minutes. And yeah, we get it. You guys are good musicians, but I thought this really could have been a one album, like a one disc pony, I guess, if you will.
I hear you. What do you have for best cover art?
I mean, I'm going to have to go with Halloween on this one. I thought it was just a very cool looking, almost like a museum-esque art kind of style. I got the limited edition box set, which came with the vinyl, and it was really cool to see that kind of artwork in a larger form. So that was my number one as far as artwork goes. It was
when you get the tattoo, I'll look forward to seeing it on your arm or your back.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to get the Beast in Black album cover tattooed on my back, so I'll just say that much.
I think that's probably a good thing for you. I'll say this. Best cover art for me, A Voice for the Lost. As I mentioned, Aranea. If it wasn't for the cover art, I wouldn't have listened to the album, so I think that speaks volumes. The other one that comes to mind was Rivers of Nihil, The Work. An album that really didn't click for me very much. I thought it was okay, but I thought the cover art was amazing. I was familiar with the band, though, so I'm kind of cheating. I knew what was going on there, but I thought it was really good.
Very nice.
Next, best comeback album.
Best comeback album. I don't know that I have one, just because the bands that I expected to come out with good albums did. And the bands I guess that I wasn't expecting much from weren't on the list. So, you know what? I'm going to go with Annette just because her last album was such a different style.
It's a good choice.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Annette Olsen solo album. I thought that Magnus Carlsen kind of really like breathed some life into her solo act and really gave it kind of that kick, that metal kick in the butt, I guess.
That's a really good choice. I have Lock Vostok there just because you want to talk about a comeback album. They were never there for me. And then all of a sudden they released this and it wound up in my top 5. So that's my comeback album, even though I don't know that they were ever there, but we'll go with that. Best concert?
Well, I only went to one metal concert the whole year and I got COVID at it. So, Unleash the Archers.
Unleashing the COVID all throughout Rochester, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it was a hell of a show. I mean, maybe next time I see a metal show, I won't, develop a deadly virus. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of an easy choice being that it was the only metal show I went to. I also saw Collective Soul. They played with Better Than Ezra and Tonic. That was just the first concert I'd been to in a long time, and just kind of getting to see like an outdoor show in the summertime when the weather was nice and everybody was outside and it didn't feel like you had to sit inside a hot building with a mask on. That environment was just nice to go back to. But yeah, my concert going was pretty few and far between.
We'll go to my choice, which was really twofold. I didn't see a ton of concerts, but Swallow the Sun was just fantastic live. And Unleash the Archers, like you mentioned, they've gotten so much better since the last time I saw them. They're really developing as a band, and Swallow the Sun is just, a bunch of professionals. So it's kind of like a two-way race there. I look forward to catching more shows in 2022, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I trust that things will get better this spring. So I look forward to that. Let's go to biggest surprise.
For me, it would have to be the Kalidia re-recording of Lies Device, because I really wasn't expecting much of anything. I mean, what do you expect? The band's re-recording one of their only 2 albums, and it just really just blew me away. So that was a surprise for me, and I would probably put the Ronnie Atkins and the Edu albums kind of as big surprises. I wasn't expecting to enjoy those albums quite as much as I did, so I'll throw those in the hat as well.
Nice. I am with you. For me, it's a couple of things. Number one was something that I heard really late in the year, and this was a one-man band from, I think, Arizona. The album was under the title Desiderium, and the album was called Aria. I don't know how to describe this. There's black metal, there's prog metal. It's almost like a Winter Sun, not Winter Sun, I'm sorry. It's almost like a Wilderun type of sound to it as well. This was all over the place, and it was 5 tracks. It's like 50 minutes long, but I really, really enjoyed this album, along with Unrequited's All Is Found. 2 very, very similar albums in terms of the style, both from one-man bands, both fantastic, worth mentioning. And then obviously the Edu, which I mentioned earlier, which just completely blew me away out of nowhere. A tremendous surprise, but I loved it.
Yeah, well said. How about, did you have a favorite cover song in 2021?
So I mentioned Runaway by Eldritch, or, obviously the Bon Jovi cover. And then the Lord covers album. I just thought they did a really good job, and I thought it would be remiss not to mention that entire album of covers. But the Bon Jovi Runaway cover was probably my favorite. Yours?
Yeah. Mine was actually from that Lord album. It was their cover of Real Life, Send Me an Angel. I thought they that's one of my favorite songs of all time, and they knocked that one out of the park. And, as you mentioned before, they also did a cover from the new Iron Maiden album where they kind of upstaged one of the biggest metal bands of all time. So cheers to them on that one. But those were just a couple off the top of my head. I really enjoyed the Eldritch Bon Jovi cover as well.
Nice. As we wind it down here, we have Best EP. What do you have for that?
My best EP, there was a handful. You know what? I'm gonna give it to a newcomer Sky Blazer with the Time for Deliverance EP, right up my alley. This is a band that's inspired by bands like Power Quest and Rainseed / Majestica. So I mean, you just know that it's right up my alley, and the fact that there's a song about Mega Man. I mean, the vocals took me a little bit to kind of get into. I didn't love them at first, but then this little 4-track EP just grew on me, and I ended up loving it. So I'm looking forward to the first full length album. This was really good stuff.
Nice. I remember listening to that as well, and it was the vocals that held me back as well, but maybe I should revisit it. I had mentioned the Teramaze EP, Sorella Minar, earlier. I think that was fantastic. Insomnium's Argent Moon, also another good release from Insomnium. Mortemia's The Pandemic Pandemonium Sessions, which is kind of like symphonic metal with a bunch of different guest vocalists. Really, really outstanding release. And then how can I not mention the Moron Police EP, The Stranger in the High Tide? I don't think it was as good as the last album, but I just love this band, and I can't wait. If they release something, I'm going to grab it just because I like them so much.
Yeah, I enjoyed that quite a bit too. That's a band that, even as much as I'm not much of a prog guy, it's something about their style of prog is just super catchy, and I enjoyed
They're going places. They're going
places.
places.
I enjoyed those handful of tunes from that EP. That was good stuff.
Most anticipated.
Honestly, I thought also the Dark Horse White Horse EP with Marcella Bovio was really good too.
I have that as a 2020 release. Otherwise, that would have been number 1, number 2, and number 3. I think that EP was fantastic, and I would have put it in my top 50 list. I mean, like, that's how much I loved it, but I had it as a 2020 release.
Yeah, that was good. I also enjoyed the 3 posthumous Bodum tracks from Bodum After Midnight were quite good. It's kind of a nice way to kind of send off for our fallen hero. But a band that I kind of got into later in my metal fandom, this was kind of a cool little after the fact thing that they put out, and it was enjoyable. I was surprised. It still surprises me how much I ended up becoming a fan of Children of Bodom.
No question here. Let's jump to looking ahead, the 2022 release that you're looking forward to most.
For right now, it's probably neck and neck between, I would say, Ayreon, Star One, and Battle Beast, which both albums are going to be released this month. But I'm excited for both.
Totally with you with the Star One. The only thing I would put up there with that is the new Porcupine Tree, because as much as I didn't like the Steven Wilson solo album, the fact that Porcupine Tree is coming out with a new album, my spidey senses go up, and I just get real excited. So it's probably not going to meet my expectations, but I look forward to hearing it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's going to be kind of a hard expectation to meet. Also worth mentioning, based on just how good the Sabaton Christmas song was, I'm looking forward to hearing the entire album. And
well, you know what? We might as well get into best non-album single, because you just hit the nail on the head with Christmas Truce. I have kind of soured on Sabaton as of late. It's just been kind of a little bit derivative. I know some listeners out there that are big fans of the band are probably thinking I'm crazy, but they hit it out of the park with that song and that video, and it's my non-album single of the year. I thought it was fantastic, and like, you can't watch that video and not get amped.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was like wondering if that it would live up to your lofty words, and it did. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, I hyped that quite a lot. I'll be honest with you.
You said it was the best Sabaton song that was ever written.
Yeah, so. And I believe that. And listen, to be fair, it's been a long time since I've listened to them, although I shouldn't say that. I've listened to a lot of their stuff. I just haven't enjoyed listening to a lot of their stuff. I enjoyed the hell out of that, so I'm looking forward to whatever they come out with next.
Yeah, my single of the year should be no surprise to anyone. Power Quest Bound for Glory.
Yes.
I know Ashley Edison was very proud of this track. He said he thought it was one of the best songs that they'd written in a while, and it harkened back to some of the older days. And I can't help but agree. I'm looking forward to hearing what else they got, but it sounds like they're okay with just kind of giving us a slow burn until the pandemic kind of winds its way out. So, but this was a nice little taste after they hadn't released anything for about 4 years, and just good stuff. Just the kind of stuff that just always puts a smile on my face when I hear it, as usual. And circling back just to the most anticipated release, I also think it should be mentioned Amorphous has another album coming out, and the Bastions of Consistency. I'm expecting that to be with, in both of our top 10s, if not higher, by the end of the year.
It's hard not to with their. It's amazing how they're able to do it release after release, but somehow they do it. Let's go to MVP. I guess like the musician that was like the most valuable this year.
For my money, it was Nora from Battle Beast. She was all over the place. She was on the she did her that duet album with the singer from Smackbound that kind of just missed my top 50, but that was I thought was good. She released her first solo album this year. She was on the Heart Healer album. I'm probably missing a handful of other things that she just did guest vocals on. I love anytime I hear her voice, it just makes me happy. I think she's got such a unique style and she's so good. So tack on the a single or two from Battle Beast's upcoming album, and I thought she was just everywhere in 2021. So she was my personal MVP. I'll
give it to Dean Wells. I mentioned Terra Maze earlier. I have talked about the EP, the single, the album. Listen, none of this stuff is my album of the year, but when you release an album, an EP, and a single, and I am mentioning all three on a top 50 podcast, I think you're doing something right. So I'm going to give it to Dean Wells, the mastermind behind Terra Maze.
The dude definitely keeps himself busy, and that's
putting it
definitely mildly. The best thing I can say about Dean is he's definitely kept busy during the pandemic, writing lots of good stuff, and hell of a singer too. I don't know that he did the vocals on some of the earlier Terra Maze stuff, but I know that he has been doing it lately, and he's a great vocalist.
Yeah, no question about it. And then we're going to wrap up with the best guest appearance.
I did not have this on my list, so I'm going to have to just think about it for a sec.
All right, so I'm going to bail you out here. It's not a problem. Scale the Summit is a prog band that had been an instrumental band for their entire career. But for whatever reason, they took it upon themselves to release an album with a bunch of guest vocalists, basically one on each track. On their most recent release, which, although the album itself, I don't think it was the best album of the year, I was really curious to see what this band was going to sound like with a bunch of singers and different singers at that. And so they released this album called Subjects, probably about midway through the year. And I was shocked to find that one of the guest vocalists was the singer from The Reign of Kindo, Joey Secaroli. And I'm sure I'm butchering his name, but he performed on a song called Jackhammer Rabbit. And I am a huge fan of theirs. I make no bones about it. They're probably my favorite band. But when I got to hear him sing alongside this, great progressive metal instrumental band, I couldn't believe it. And although I don't think it's the best song in the world, for me personally, it was just so cool to hear that I'm giving it the nod.
That's fair enough. I guess I'll just repeat what I said earlier as far as Roy Khan doing a guest spot with Seven Spires. I thought that was super cool.
Definitely.
And I had added a something to my list, which was just honorable mentions, just in case there was anything that wasn't mentioned. And off the top of my head, I thought that the Primal Fear single that they did with Tarja, I Will Be Gone, was one of the best songs of the year. It just kind of, I think, got lost in the shuffle because it was on an EP. I also wanted to mention Wolverine's Darkened Sun EP that you got to speak with a couple members of the band and talk about that. That was good stuff. I'm a big fan of Love Bites. They released an EP called Glory, Glory to the World, which I, most definitely enjoyed quite a bit. You had mentioned Lord's cover albums, definitely worth mentioning. And I'll repeat what I had said on our interview that we did with Richard West, but The Collector by League of Lights was easily one of my favorite songs of the year. I thought it was just a fantastic song, and I really enjoyed what him and his wife put together on their album. So
yeah, that was great. And if you like that, definitely spend some time with Black Moth, White Butterfly, because it's in the same genre vein, if you will, both exceptionally well done. So there you have it. That's the best of 2021. Obviously we've started preparing our lists for 2022. I've got 2 albums on mine already, and we'll see if they stay there come the end of the year, but I won't be spoiling that at this point. We will come back next week and do the Steel Panther episode that we had talked about, before you got COVID back in 2021. And thanks for all the support. We love to hear from everybody. Keep the requests coming. I've got a list 6 miles long at this point, but we will get to them all eventually. We promise, even if it means cramming in 2 a month. We will get to them all. So thank you. And if you have any other thoughts, now would be the time.
I just I thought it was cool to do our first kind of live episode. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Thanks to everybody in the chat that hung out with us, and hell of a year. I mean, we even though we missed a week, I think with the interviews, we did more than 52 episodes, and the podcast rolls on, and we'll probably try to do more of these live interactive kind of things in the future. I thought it was kind of cool having a chat going and doing it this way. So
there you have it. Cheers. We'll see you next week with something a little bit different when we go back to Steel Panther, and we'll catch everyone soon. Stay safe, stay healthy, and here's to an enjoyable 2022.
Absolutely. Take care, buddy.